Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the first episode of the new SLW Institute webinar series, AI-driven innovation in medical technologies. Today, we're going to be presenting on the topic of patent landscape and trends for AI inventions. My name is Robert Hirning. I'll be your moderator today. I'm a patent attorney and a principal at SLW. My practice involves patent preparation and prosecution in a variety of technology areas, including medical devices, and medtech software, and AI. And our speaker today will be Marv Beekman. Marv is a patent attorney and a principal at SLW. Marv has a background in electrical engineering, and he works with a variety of technical areas, including biomedical devices, electronics, computer hardware and software, and applied forms of machine learning and AI. Marv's work here at SLW involves representing individual inventors as well as companies of all sizes. So thank you, Marv, for participating here. We'll be recording the webinar today, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording and the slides to everyone who's registered. We'll also put a link in the chat where you can access the slides online. If you'd like to ask a question for us today, you can enter questions using the Q&A feature in the Zoom menu, or you can also chat if you'd like to reach out to us directly. We'll address the questions either during the presentation or at the end, time permitting, and we'll try to definitely explain any questions that you have about the data as we go along here. We'd also like to invite you to register for our next episode in our webinar series. We'll be covering patent eligibility challenges for AI inventions coming up on February 19th. In the February episode, I'll be the speaker and Marv will be moderating. We'll discuss some of the challenges in obtaining patents for AI-based medical technology, especially some of the eligibility and disclosure issues that come up in the US and other countries. We'll also cover some case law and patent office developments, so that'll be happening in February. And with that preview, I'll now turn this presentation over to Marv for presentation of the landscape.
Thank you, Robert, and thanks for joining us. So we began by identifying the medtech domains and the AI technologies we wanted to analyze. Through an iterative process using AI tools to help characterize the groupings, testing early searches, and refining, we ultimately organized the space into a matrix of 9 medtech categories and 6 AI categories. For each of the 9 medtech categories, we then conducted 6 separate searches corresponding to the AI categories. The searches used keywords in the title, abstract, and claims, and we use CPC codes. That's the codes used by patent office searches to help find the medtech categories. We then analyzed the search results, including identifying the patent offices in which the applications were filed. We were not necessarily looking for absolute counts. Rather, we were looking for recent trends in the comparative data, the country-to-country data, the tech category-to-tech category data. This allows us to map how different forms of AI are being applied across the medtech landscape. Let's begin with an overview of the 9 AI-driven medtech domains that were identified. First, predictive analytics and risk management. AI models, such as supervised machine learning, deep learning, and federated learning, may be used to forecast patient outcomes and operational risks. These tools enable early intervention and more efficient use of healthcare resources. For example, AI may be used to predict hospital readmission risk using electronic health records and vital signs to proactively support high-risk patients. The second is diagnostics and imaging. AI may be used to interpret medical images using convolutional neural networks, machine learning, and natural language processing for structuring radiology reports. This strengthens diagnostic accuracy and accelerates clinical workflows. For example, AI may be used to automatically flag fractures on X-rays or convert free text radiology notes into structured data. Personalized medicine is the third category. AI tailors therapies to the individual patient using multimodal models, knowledge graphs, and reinforcement learning. These systems integrate genetic, clinical, and molecular data to recommend highly targeted treatments. For example, AI may be used to suggest oncology regimens based on tumor genetics. The fourth category is clinical decision support. AI may assist clinicians with ranked diagnoses, treatment options, and safety alerts. Rule-based systems incorporate clinical guidelines, while machine learning analyzes historical outcomes. Natural language processing extracts insights from charts and clinical notes. For example, AI may be used to alert clinicians to potential drug interactions or recommend patient-specific care pathways. The fourth category is robotics and surgical assistance. AI improves precision and consistency in surgery through computer vision, which may use deep learning and convolutional neural networks, sensor fusion, and optimized control policies. Systems interpret visual and instrument feedback to guide robotic maneuvers. For example, AI may enable robotic arms to automatically position surgical instruments with sub-millimeter precision. The drug discovery and therapy optimization category is the sixth one that we looked at. AI accelerates the identification of drug candidates and optimizes therapeutic regimens. Techniques include graph learning, predictive modeling, and Bayesian optimization. For example, AI may screen large compound libraries or dynamically adjust dosages based on patient response data. Remote monitoring. AI may be used to analyze patient-generated data from wearables and at-home devices. Time series models, anomaly detection, and edge processing may be used to identify meaningful health shifts in real time. For example, AI may be used to detect arrhythmias at home and automatically notify providers. Natural language processing for data extraction is another category. Large language models and entity extraction techniques may be used to convert unstructured clinical text into structured analyzable data. For example, AI may be used to extract symptoms, diagnoses, and insights from physician progress notes. Administrative automation. AI may be used to automate scheduling, billing, documentation, and task triage. Natural language processing and machine learning may be used to prioritize risks, to prioritize requests, and produce summaries that free clinicians from clerical workloads. For example, AI may automatically summarize lab results and schedule follow-ups.
So Marv, you've just introduced the kind of the 9 different medtech categories that we'll show here in this landscape report. So kind of, yeah, what's the reasons for classifying these different domains? And yeah, why are they kind of defined in this fashion and with the data we've pulled?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's how do you divide the information? We wanted to approach this from both the medtech perspective and the AI perspective, keeping the number of categories manageable for both. We wanted to use intuitive categories similar to how investors and R&D groups would view the technology. And the goal was to try to illustrate that different types of medtech use different types of AI. Before we get into the specific data for medtech AI technologies, I believe it is valuable to view the overall filing trends for patent applications in the jurisdictions discussed today. I wondered how many patent applications have been filed in each of these patent offices since the year 2000, because we're looking for recent trends. This way you have a reference point to compare the relative filing numbers and charts that follow. Based on WIPO data, over 8 million patent applications have been filed in China since 2000. My understanding is that this number reflects invention patent applications rather than utility model applications. Utility model applications are about 70% higher recently than the invention patent applications. I think 1.8 million invention patent applications were filed last year and over 3 million utility models were filed. By way of comparison, the United States has filed about 3 million patent applications since 2000. Japan, Korea, and Europe follow with between about 1 to 1.5 million patent applications filed since 2000. Canada and Australia have much fewer overall patent filings, still important, obviously. And that's probably attributable to their smaller populations, and they have economies that are generally more resource-based and service-based. The Chinese numbers are very large. Some reasons for this: of course, China has a very large population, so they have a large market, a large pool of engineers, high-tech manufacturing capabilities, and a focus on STEM education, et cetera. But in China, patents have also been a policy instrument. They have had significant government incentives, including direct patent subsidies, tax incentives, and performance targets. These incentives also appear to have incentivized irregular filings, which are like nearly identical filings, plagiarized content, et cetera. I've read that China has been addressing these irregular filings and that they are phasing out or already have phased out direct subsidies. So that change may actually reduce the overall number of filings in China moving forward. It will be interesting to see. For those interested in Chinese law practice, I encourage you to check out Aaron Wininger's website, China IP Law Update. Aaron is a principal of our firm and is a director of the China IP practice. Again, the website is ChinaIPLawUpdate.com. We will now transition to a deeper dive into the distribution of data across the different jurisdictions, including China, the United States, the EP, Korea, Japan, Australia, and Canada. We'll start with predictive analytics and risk management domain. This domain will serve as a useful example of the different types of information that can be extracted from these charts. The first slide shows where patent filing activity is concentrated geographically. Here, the United States and China clearly lead. Smaller jurisdictions like Australia and Canada have comparatively lower volume. Again, this is where patent applications are being filed. It's not the location of the owners of the patent applications. US companies, for example, may file in all the jurisdictions. Second, the pending active inactive breakdown on the right side lets us understand the portfolio maturity. China and the EPO have higher ratio of pending applications to active patents, which typically signals newer filing activity. The US shows the reverse, more active than pending, which is what we expect from more established portfolios. So the active would be granted patents that are still actively enforced. And active filings also tell a story. They reflect portfolio pruning, shifts in market interest, or simple maintenance fee decisions.
So Marv, you've already touched on, I think, just the emphasis in patent filings in China, and that shows here in your first slide. One of the questions we have is, could you please explain in China the difference between an invention patent applications and utility model? So if these numbers are, being sort of artificially inflated or larger than you otherwise would expect, what is that? How does China compare then to the United States with those types of filings?
I think that the numbers do not include much for the utility models. The patent invention are what we typically think of as patent applications. They undergo a pretty rigorous review, both novelty and inventiveness. They have a 20 years from application life cycle. The utility models are more directed to structural or arrangements, more mechanical oriented, and not really appropriate for methods or processes. And so my belief is that the search that we did focusing on the AI categories probably would have eliminated much of the utility models. I could be wrong, and that would be something definitely worth investigating in the future, though.
Yeah. So then to confirm kind of the numbers we're trying to look, versus the kind of outsized leap that China has over everyone else, these numbers that we're looking at here should try to be a much more apples to apples comparison between China and the United States.
I believe so. And
Yes.
China and the United States are the focus. They're the largest filings. And we touched on it. Yes, China has a large population, but tech economies have the electronic software, et cetera, that can support AI. And AI patents cluster around digital and computer technologies. I've recently read that China accounts for about 70% of AI patent applications, and that's all AI, not medtech. And the US has the largest stock of granted AI patents. And so some of the increase that we're seeing in the medtech area is likely due to some of the incentives that China has. They have the Healthy China 2030 incentive that was introduced around 2016 timeframe. And I think some of the large trends that you see in upcoming slides has at least something to do with those incentives. Nearly every domain in the full landscape shows a strong 2018 to 2021 increase, and this domain is no exception. That period represents broad global acceleration in AI-enabled medtech patenting. The filings in the United States are historically higher than other jurisdictions, but the curve representing China's filings rises more steeply than the filings in other regions, which is also a pattern that we see in other domains. The drop at the end in 2024-25 is not unique to this domain. It appears across all authorities in most domains, and it is most likely due to the publication delay. It's not a real reduction in innovation. there's an 18-month delay from first filing to most publication. This slide shows who is most active in the space. We may see a combination of traditional medtech companies, consumer electronics manufacturers, global technology companies, and universities and research hospitals. Some medtech domains show significant patent filings by medical device companies, tech companies, and academic institutions. AI appears to encourage convergence of patent filings among medtech software and digital health analytics.
So Marv, a question then about sort of the search methodology. Now that we're actually looking at some of uh, the statistics here, and not surprising, there's a number of large medical device companies that are appearing in the top results here. So, did the searches that we did for this landscape were they focused on the claims, on certain keywords? Would they sweep up boilerplate or kind of background discussions of AI?
Yeah, so we did like CPC mostly for generate the medical technology areas, and the AI we use keywords. We developed a pretty long list of keywords that we look for in the claims and titles and abstracts, trying to avoid the the use of boilerplate in general. That hey, people know how to use AI, and it just isn't background information. We try to keep it focused on what was actually the focus of the application. And again, the same search was done for all jurisdictions, so I think it's pretty accurate in showing the trends. And I'm not wasn't too concerned about the total numbers per se, but I was looking for the trends, the relative numbers between the jurisdictions. This slide shows the types of AI methods being patented in the medtech domain. And again, similar patterns are found in nearly all domains. Machine learning and neural networks are dominant everywhere. Hybrid and ensemble approaches are also consistently strong, combining multiple models to improve the overall performance. Generative and foundation models, including LLMs, currently form a smaller portion of total filings. This chart provides a snapshot where we currently are and may provide early signs of where we may be going. Application domain is a system developed by PatSnap in which keywords are generated using patent full text and artificial intelligence technology. The top application domains indicate the functional purpose of the technology. The high activity categories are consistent with the general movement toward data-driven and personalized medicine. Medical automated diagnosis, health index calculation, medical data mining, medical equipment, and biological models seem to be the largest categories. For this medtech domain, these applications may indicate that predictive analytics is being used to identify disease risk, score patient health, extract patterns from electronic health records, and integrate imaging data into clinical decision making. Might be my favorite chart that we have in the slide deck. The application domain filing year matrix shows a heat map of patent filings for different application domains. Almost all application domains exhibit growth, but medical automated diagnosis, health index calculation, medical data mining, medical equipment, and biological models appear to show the highest growth. One may use this heat map to potentially identify a white space or emerging trends within a particular medtech domain. Well,
And to confirm, Marv, the heat map here does show again that drop off with 2024 and 2025. And again, our understanding is that's primarily due to the publication delay, simply that the applications, it takes up to 18 months for applications to be published, and so some of the data from 2024 and 2025 is incomplete. But is that correct with the way to
that,
read
that is
this?
correct. I think it's pretty accurate through 2023 and probably the first half of 24, but the last 18 months is going to have a breakdown. Why there's some numbers in there are likely due to continuation filings because it's publication from 18 months from the priority date, and so continuation is published faster. So you might get an indication how many of these might be continuations based on the early data. From here, the deck moves into a detailed walkthrough through the other medtech categories using the same structure as we just discussed. Rather than going through each chart in the same level of detail as we did for slides 8 through 14, I'll summarize the main patterns. The full set of slides will be available after the session. Different people will naturally gravitate toward the domains most relevant to their own work, and so I encourage you to check out the slides on our website. Hang on, I'll be moving through these slides pretty quickly. Diagnostics and imaging remains one of the highest volume and most mature domains. This domain shows very strong US filing activity and broad global participation. Application domain categories like image analysis, image enhancement, and automated diagnosis show consistently high counts. Philips and Slog, which is a Johnson & Johnson family of companies, is identified as a top assignee in diagnostics and imaging. Machine learning and neural networks and hybrid ensembles are most often found in these applications. And the heat map illustrates a trend toward medical automated diagnosis and image analysis. Personalized medicine shows very strong US filing activity. I found it interesting that the relative number of filings in China compared to other jurisdictions is significantly less in this category. And this may reflect investment and cultural differences in the corresponding markets. Personalized medicine being more of a focus in the United States. Genentech is identified as the top assignee in the personalized medicine. Hybrid and ensembles are most often found in these applications. The heat map for personalized medicine illustrates a trend toward active pharmaceuticals.
Marv, we had a question from the audience about when we talk about white space and sort of, again, in the context of the heat map or in white space and innovation, what's a good explanation or definition of what that's referring to?
Um, the idea is that the more activity that's in a space, the more crowded it's going to be likely, and it may be more difficult to find areas to patent in that area. So it's kind of a challenge because you want to see the direction that the technology is going, and the red shows the direction that the technology is going, and it says, hey, this is where people think we need to be filing or investigating. But these filings, there's also going to be a lot more activity. And so you might see, for example, an early indicator that things are starting to increase, and you may want to try to get in that space before there's 5,000 applications in there instead of 500, for example.
Yeah, so a measure of, I guess, white space being empty or how crowded or uncrowded in this
Yeah.
case it would be.
Correct,
Okay.
correct. Opportunities for patenting, correct. Or to practice your invention in that space. Clinical decision support sits squarely between software heavy and clinically anchored domains, and its filing patterns reflect that hybrid character. This domain shows moderate overall volume, but high diversity in application areas, ranging from guideline-based decision tools to risk scoring, chart interpretation, and treatment pathway optimization. And you again see the high spike for China, very typical in all our trends. Philips is identified as the top assignee in clinical decision support. Machine learning and neural networks are most often found in these applications. The heat map reveals growth in medical automated diagnosis, patient-specific data analysis, healthcare resource optimization, and laboratory and imaging linked decision tools. This domain looks quite different from software-heavy areas. Robotics shows higher allowance rates, shorter claim lengths, and a strong concentration of filings in surgical systems, navigation, instrumentation, and manipulators. Silog is identified as the top assignee in robotics. Hybrid and ensembles followed by machine learning and neural networks are most often found in these applications. The heat map reveals growth in surgical robots and navigation systems. Drug discovery and development shows steady growth driven by AI methods used for molecular screening, compound optimization, therapeutic targeting, and biomarker identification, with top S&Es including major pharmaceutical and research institutions. The domain is characterized by substantial activity in probabilistic models, generative and foundation models, and hybrid approaches. This reflects the complexity of integrating biological, chemical, and clinical data. Bristol Myers is identified as the top S&E in drug discovery and development. Hybrid and ensembles, followed by machine learning and neural networks, are the most often found in these applications. And the heat map reveals consistently high activity in organic active ingredients and growth in medical automated diagnosis. Remote monitoring shows strong participation from both traditional medtech companies and consumer device manufacturers, with filings that reflect growing reliance on time series analysis, anomaly detection, and edge processing models. Samsung and Cellega are identified as the top S&Es in remote monitoring. Machine learning and neural networks, closely followed by hybrid and ensembles, are most often found in these applications. The heat map reveals growth in automated diagnoses, health index calculation, and patient-specific data. Natural language processing is one of the fastest growing areas. And here you see a big spike with China since 2022.
And Marv,
Philips and IBM are identified as the top S&Es in the use of natural language processing for data extraction.
yes, Marv, a question regarding when we use the term, natural language processing, we're not necessarily just referring to um, algorithms to do that and maybe the classical, but this would also encompass any sort of natural language use of chatbots, large language models, and technologies along those lines. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And so obviously there might be some patents in the area from people who are AI focused, but a lot of these applications will be very specific to specific systems used by the medtech companies, for example. And you're absolutely right. It also will include anywhere from like chatbots for like interacting with patients to also extracting uh, data from clinical notes. There's just a lot of applications for LLMs. Machine learning and neural networks is the most often found in these applications. The heat map reveals growth in automated diagnosis, digital data retrieval, patient-specific modeling, and medical data mining. Administrative automation is heavily software-driven and tends to show higher proportions of pending and inactive filings. And interestingly, I think since it's software-driven, I think that's why the United States has a higher percentage compared to the other jurisdictions. Philips and IBM are identified as the top S&Es in the use of natural language processing for administrative automation. Machine learning and neural networks, closely followed by hybrid and ensembles, are most often found in these applications. The heat map reveals growth in medical equipment and automated diagnoses. And with that very quick overview, we'll take a breath and shift from the domain level analysis into the cross domain insights and then into some US prosecution trends. Hopefully, this will help tie together some of the patterns that we quickly saw in the individual domains and highlight what they mean for patent strategy. But again, you can grab this information from our website if you want to take a look here, closer look at the data. This slide summarizes several portfolio geographic patterns that appear consistently across all 9 domains. On the geographic side, the United States almost always leads in total filings. China is the fastest growing jurisdiction, shown by the high ratios of pending applications. The EPO, Japan, and Korea consistently contribute, but on a smaller scale. On the portfolio side, we see notable differences between software-heavy and hardware-heavy domains. Software domains tend to have a higher mix of pending and inactive filings, likely reflecting rapidly changing technology, strategic abandonment, and evolving standards. Hardware domains like imaging or robotics tend to have more active patents, indicating sustained portfolio maintenance and possibly longer development cycles. The filing year trend is strikingly similar across domains. It was a broad surge from 2018 through 2021. The apparent decline after 2023 again appears to be driven by publication lags rather than reduced innovation.
And a question about some of the data and the filings that we pulled here. To be clear, are we showing, I guess, national stage or national filings of these patent applications? Do we know which ones originated in which country, or were the numbers we were looking at just the filings that actually occurred in each country?
The numbers we were looking at were just the filings of each country. So I did not look at, or we don't have the data to know where did the filing originate. Did it originate in China first and then go through the PCT and enter all the PCT states later? It's just raw data for filings. So it would capture if an application was filed in the United States and then went through the PCT and went into China and Japan and Australia, for example, it would capture the US, China, Japan, and Australia as individual filings.
Yes, and then as far as the search methodology that we used in trying to find some of these trends, you of course mentioned the use of keywords and CPC codes, but we didn't necessarily limit our searches to any particular industry. So when we were doing the searches, we should have been really sweeping up really all sorts of patent filings, whether that's from a company like IBM or a traditional medical device company, a pharma company. So we were trying to look across the entire landscape. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We did the CPC codes. We wanted to be in the medtech domain. We wanted medical technology patents. And then we used the AI keyword searching to focus on within that realm where was the AI happening. And what we did find is convergence from all these different types of uh, groups. We had the typical medtech medical device companies. We had the drug developers. We have universities are in this space, and we also have traditional electronic companies. We mentioned Samsung earlier. Um, Consumer device type companies that are also getting into the space in like the remote monitoring space in particular. So it was pretty broad. We captured a lot of different companies. And I think the advent of AI into medtech is converging uh, companies that like a medical device company would not typically run into
Okay.
patent space.
Another question then sort of related to China. So we've talked a lot about just the large volume in China patent filings. So does this mean then for 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 companies and applicants today that there's going to be more prior art and more Chinese language patent publications that are going to be cited against U.S. patents, against globally. So, what are there any strategies or takeaways on how to deal with, a larger volume of non-English patents and patent publications that are going to be popping up on our radar?
Yeah, there will definitely be a lot more prior art, and I think that's true just with the advent of AI, generative AI in general. It can generate a ton of prior art. It gets published, it's out there. Even the irregular filings in China are published. And so if they used AI to create a patent application that doesn't make a lot of sense, uh, it still is prior art. So patentability searches should look outside the US. And machine translations are getting better. Presumably, we'll be able to understand what's going on better with the machine translations than we have in the past 10 years. Um, and as far as clearance with more patents in China, if you're doing work in China, you got business in China, there'll be more patents that will have to be addressed in your clearance work. And I think I've seen that even not only with the invention patent, but with the utility models as well, that there's just more to consider for clearance in China. This slide summarizes the consistent technology and application themes we see across the domains. In terms of AI methodologies, machine learning and neural networks dominate every domain. Hybrid and ensemble methods are also used widely. Generative and foundation models, including large language models, are present across all domains, but currently comprise a smaller proportion of total filings. Several application domains appear repeatedly as high activity areas: medical automated diagnosis, health index and physiological scoring, patient-specific modeling, medical data mining, image analysis enhancement. These patterns suggest that medtech priorities include early detection, risk, risk scoring, personalization, and integration or integrating multimodal patient data.
So, Marv, asking a question then about this slide, and it kind of seems like there's really two approaches to get patents on AI in medtech, and that's focusing on sort of the AI itself on the left side, where we're actually talking about, uh, you know, very specific way that, a new type of network, a new type of model that's being trained, or on the right side to do something that's very application specific to use AI for a very specific purpose. I mean, is it fair to say that either way is an appropriate way to use patents, and you're able to get patents on kind of on both the AI itself as well as the applications of the AI?
Absolutely. Yeah. Companies are filing on both the novel AI models and applied uses. For example, an AI focused tech company may have developed a new AI tech for training or optimizing data, and they can file an application on that, particularly if the data is for capturing uh, clinical data from the patients. Traditional medtech companies are filing on specific applied uses of AI in their technologies. So they may have a new type of chat that they're using, or they're using it to personalize and medicate their treatment to a particular um, person using mix of sensor data, for example, or patient inputs. So absolutely, both types are being patented, both the AI specific and how the AI is being applied. This section compares U.S. prosecution outcomes by technology area. And we included this because we were wondering, do certain domains face more challenges or enjoy smoother paths through the U.S. Patent Office? We'll look at we'll look at allowance rates, office action counts, cycle times, claim length, and other metrics to see how prosecution experience varies across domains. This chart shows a total number of applications by domain. Natural language processing may be used in varied medical technology, so one may expect that it would have the highest number of applications. Other domains have significantly less numbers. For example, drug discovery, because there's fewer players in that area, presumably. The shape of this chart is generally followed in the number of office actions in each of the areas. And so we'll show those numbers later on, but it was interesting that the general shape stays the same, which indicates that there's no obvious difference in the number of expected office actions for these different technology areas. This chart compares the number of allowed, pending, and abandoned applications by domains. Software-heavy areas such as administrative automation and clinical decision support exhibit higher abandonment rates, which is represented by the percentage of the lightest blue compared to the total height of the column. Hardware anchored domains like robotics and imaging have higher allowance rates. This is indicated by the percentage of the darkest blue compared to the total column. The higher abandonment rates of administrative automation and clinical decision support may be attributable, at least partially, to examination challenges. One, patent subject matter eligibility in the United States and other countries have their versions. Also, the growing number of references may make it more challenging to argue over the prior art rejections. There's just more art to have to argue and say that we're distinct from. However, the higher abandonments also may be attributable to strategic abandonments. The technology may be quickly evolving, and a cost benefit analysis by the applicant indicated that it wasn't worth trying to get a patent in the application anymore. Robotics and natural language processing have the highest allowance rates at 82% and 81%. Administrative automation and clinical decision support are at the lower end, around 63 to 65%. This suggests that domains anchored in hardware like robotics are more likely to be granted patents, while software-heavy areas may face more challenges, like eligibility challenges. However, it is interesting to note that the allowance rates for all of these AI medtech domains seem to be at or above the average for the US Patent Office. For comparison, the overall allowance rate in the US Patent Office is around 60%, I believe, and I believe the allowance rate for medical device patents is around 70%. And these are higher than that. This chart compares the average number of office actions required to reach allowance. This metric reflects the level of negotiation back and forth expected during prosecution. Most domains cluster between 1.7 and 2.1 office actions. Administrative automation and clinical decision support tend to have a little more office actions on average. And that may be possibly due to the patent subject matter eligibility issues. Natural language processing for data extraction tends to require fewer office actions. And my guess is that this may be because such processing has a specific application, which may make it easier to avoid prior art and may help it show an improvement to the underlying technology to overcome subject matter eligibility rejections. It is noted that these are averages and do not reflect difficulty that may be encountered in prosecuting a specific application before a specific examiner. We all have had examiners that are more difficult than others. For comparison, I believe the number of office actions for medical devices in general is about 2.5, which is more than the number of office actions shown above. As such, the MedTech AI domains appear to average fewer office actions than the general medical device applications.
So Marv, we have a question about
This chart shows, yes,
examination here. Question about examination. So are patent examiners, at least with our practice in the US, are they using AI to examine patent applications? And is that making it harder, easier? Do you have any observations on what we're encountering if the examiners are now using AI on their end?
I haven't seen any official pronouncements that they're supposed to be using AI, but they definitely are using AI from my experience. I've seen some lengthier office actions that look like it's been machine generated, where the office actions are much longer than the application itself. So that will be challenging. I do hope And I think I have been seeing that their searches are generally getting better. They're finding more relevant art faster, and I hope that's a trend that continues. And I would expect it would continue. That they'll be trained on how to use their AI tools. They will get AI tools and be trained how to use them to find relevant art. And instead of having really long office actions, I'm hoping that they can be more focused and specific. It's a great question, though. And applicants too are using AI as well, so they're using it to evaluate office actions and uh, consider different types of claim amendments that might be used, and quickly identify differences in your claims and the art that's being cited. So the current chart that I'm showing shows the number of patents allowed with 0 office actions, meaning that they were granted without negotiation. There's no back and forth. It is noted that this and the following slides, which show the distributions for the 1, 2, 3, and 4 or more office actions, generally follow the distribution of total patents. That is, the number of office actions appears to be generally proportionate to the total number of applications in each domain. As such, it does not appear that any one technology will encounter more office actions than other technology areas. And I'll quickly scroll. You'll see that the general pattern stays the same. For most technology areas, between about 1/2 and 2/3 of the appealed applications are allowed. The clinical decision support area has a slightly less than 50-50 chance of being successful in appeal. A contributing factor for the lower success rate, in my opinion, is likely difficulties with patent subject matter eligibility, as it's a human activity that they're claiming. Most domains cluster around 32 to 38 months from time of filing to the time when the application is allowed or abandoned. Natural language processing for data extraction is on the faster end, while clinical decision support is slower. In comparison, the average time to disposition in the patent office is about 22 months, and the average time to disposition for medical devices is roughly 24 to 30 months. So even though the number of office actions is about the same, it's taken longer for patents to issue from filed applications. And this can be delays either on the patent office end or the applicant's end, and probably both. And my suspicion is that it is both, and it has to do with the complexity of the technology involved. This chart shows the average length of the first claim in each domain. And I found this data to be interesting as it shows a significant difference from patents in general. For comparison purposes, the average first claim length for the US Patent Office is often within the range of 40 to 80 words. Or if you're thinking of a normal application with normal spacings, about 1/5 to 1/4 of a page will be the length of a first claim. In contrast, the above identified claim lengths are significantly higher, 60 to 85% of a page. Hardware anchored domains like robotics and imaging have shorter claims, while software heavy claims have longer claims. The shorter claims probably indicate more concrete device based inventions, while longer claims may be needed to capture complex software functionality. Also, longer claims may reflect the current challenges in convincing examiners that the claims recite subject matter that is eligible to be patented, and that the claims are not merely abstract ideas. To wrap up, how are we doing on time? To wrap up, MedTech has historically centered around machine learning and neural networks used in technology areas such as imaging, diagnostics, and predictive analytics. Hybrid and ensemble approaches have been used, and they integrate data sources such as text, imaging, and sensor data. Strong growth has been in application domains such as medical automated diagnosis, image analysis, medical data mining, and patient-specific physiological modeling. Natural language processing for clinical text extraction appears to be another major growth area. As healthcare systems move to structured, as healthcare systems move to structure, the vast data that are unstructured, the electronic health record notes. Geographic trends show the US has the most active patents, and China is exhibiting rapid growth with an expanding pipeline, at least in the past 5 years or so. AI in medtech appears to be transitioning toward large language models to support summarization, triage, and clinical decision workflows. The expansion of natural language processing may indicate a trend toward chatbot style clinician interfaces, as well as automation of clerical burdens. We see growing integration of generative and foundation models in diagnostics, imaging, robotic planning, and administrative automation. Filings increasingly point to multimodal AI that may operate on image, text, sensor, and/or biological data. And there has been significant growth in biological and patient-specific modeling. Finally, we note that the prosecution of AI medtech patent applications in the US Patent Office have had good overall results. Allowance rates consistently have been between 65% and 82% to date. Robotics and natural language processing currently have the highest allowance rates. Additionally, it's noted that prosecution in the US Patent Office appears to be relatively efficient, as most domains average between 2 to 3 office actions, which is within normal prosecution range. A unique and noteworthy trend, again, is that on average, the allowed independent claim is long. Again, this may reflect the additional language often required for software claims. It may also reflect efforts to avoid having the claim be characterized as abstract. And that sets the stage for our next meeting, patent eligibility challenges, where we will examine subject matter eligibility concerns, disclosure requirements for AI models, and emerging eligibility frameworks in the US and globally. I'll turn that over back to Robert.
Yes. Yeah, very good. That is very informative. Lots of data to go through, and again, we encourage everyone to take a look at the slides on our website. If you have any immediate questions regarding the landscape methodology, some of the data trends, or just how do we make sense of this, we're happy to receive your questions in the webinar chat, the Q&A, or offline. Definitely wanted to continue a discussion of this subject matter here. I do have a few more questions to go over with you, Marv, to kind of fill out our remaining time and maybe some takeaways that we can take from all this data that we've reviewed here today. So maybe kind of going back to just talking about how long it takes patents, especially to get through the U.S. Patent Office. I know you had some slides that were showing, is between on average 30 to 36 months to disposition, and we're seeing that across really all of these technology areas. Being that the use of AI will involve software, and there's a lot of rapid development, a lot of changes in software. Is there any better filing strategies that applicants should use if it's going to take 3 years just to get a decision on allowance in the patent office? Software is rapidly changing. How can applicants respond to that? Is that a problem, or is that an opportunity?
For like how long it takes
Hmm.
to prosecute through the patent office.
Yes.
Well, I think I like to view filing patent applications as a form of insurance. If it's a very hot field, we've seen some of the heat maps where there's a lot of activity happening. You want to like to file to keep your spot at the table so that you are able to practice in that area, have some bargaining chips with some other companies. For like software, where it's really fast moving technology, I think a file fast and decide later on if it's worthwhile to continue prosecution makes a lot of sense, because we are a first to file system, and you want to get that early filing date as soon as you are able to enable that invention. And then if the um, if prosecution or if the direction of the technology um, kind of does a leap over top of your application at the time you get the first office action, you may choose not to even apply because the company decided to go a different way with their products. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but that's kind of my view
Yeah.
of patents is that you still want to be
Mhm.
filing, and it is an insurance. Doesn't mean that just because you file doesn't mean you have to go to completion until it is
Yes.
been fighted through appeal, but you need
Mhm.
that early filing date.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree with the, kind of all of your advice, and really maybe the one area being that AI and software technologies do change and perhaps even become obsolete faster. Maybe that's an opportunity to look at, even if you're getting patents in that space. Does it make sense to prune and let some of the issued patents don't not pay annuities, not pay maintenance fees? So it's maybe thinking of the patent lifespan rather than it's trying to stretch out the full 20 years. Maybe it's a shorter time frame that you're really going to be focused on, especially if there's a lot of fast following companies. Patents seem to be even more important, but maybe for a shorter, condensed period of time. So that's maybe what I'll add on that.
No, that's correct. And also it's going to be very specific to your company
Hmm.
as well. I think the era of really broad AI type patenting is done. It's going to be solving a very specific problem.
Hmm.
Thinking of like the European mode, they talk about a technical solution to a technical problem, and I think that's a great way to look at filing in this area in the United States as well.
Yeah. It may be sort of a question without getting into the eligibility too much. We've definitely contrasted the U.S. with a number of jurisdictions between Europe, China, as well as some of the other Asia Pacific larger countries. Are you able to patent the same type of AI inventions in all those countries? Do the numbers reflect that maybe you're able that there's different types of protection you can get? Is it a true apples to apples comparison between countries? So yeah, do you have any
Yeah,
thoughts on that?
I actually think it is pretty accurate in the same types of patents you can get. There are some differences in medtech, obviously, um, for treatment of the human body. If you have a method for the treatment of the human body, that's only available generally in the United States and Australia, I believe. China, Korea, the other jurisdictions, Europe don't allow you to do that type of claiming. But the system claims are generally able to get patents, although there will be variations in claiming strategies in each country. Um, and that's actually normal, even for typical inventive step. Europe has a different way that they approach inventive step than the United States has for testing whether something's obvious or not. And so claims will naturally vary during prosecution in jurisdictions. So yes, you can generally get the same area, but the claims will probably look differently during
Mhm.
prosecution.
Yeah, I think I would concur with that. I mean, I think, yeah, there's definitely going to be some stylistic changes between different countries on how what the claim looks like. But really, if it's a true application of AI in solving in the med tech space, um, again, maybe the claim looks different, but you're going to be able to patent the underlying product, the underlying process, even some of the methods. For the most part, that you should be able to get protection on that globally. There really isn't a any particular jurisdiction that's closing their doors to AI, and it's really at this point it's another technology tool that we're able to use, and definitely seeing the filing numbers go up, and then kind of an exciting time for a lot of development with new innovation in med tech.
That's correct. And patent subject matter eligibility is a moving target um, for the different tests that are being applied, how it's being examined. Each country will kind of, they are looking for, is this something that can be patented? And they will have different rules. But generally, yeah, the claim will be different because of the different rules. But generally, if you got a technical solution to a technical problem to parrot Europe, I think you can get a patent.
Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of our hour here. We'd like to Yeah, thank everyone for spending your time with us. And again, encourage you to take a look at the slides offline, and hopefully you can find some value to those in your particular domain. Again, we encourage you to join us on February 19th, where we'll get into more of a detailed discussion of patent eligibility challenges for AI inventions, and specifically in the medtech area. And we'll try to keep the conversation going and expand our discussion there. So until next time, thank you for your attendance.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.